إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ونبيه من خلقه وخليله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار ثم أما بعد. Tonight we are welcoming the 22nd night of Ramadan. And so we are officially in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. A majority of Ramadan has passed by. A majority of the opportunities in Ramadan have passed by. A majority of the khair of Ramadan, of the opportunities to be saved from Jahannam, they're all gone now. And what is left, we must take advantage of. And what is left is not like what has left. What is left is not like what has left. In these 10 nights, there is a night in it, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. Laylatul Qadr, the night of power, the night, this Laylatul Qadr is better than 1,000 months. The actions in it are better than 1,000 months. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam ordered us in these 10 nights, تحروا ليلة القدر بالوتر من العشر الأواخر. Look for, search for, work for Laylatul Qadr in the last 10 nights, specifically in the odd nights of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And in preparation, and because of this, what did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to do? Aisha radiallahu anha, she told us, Rasulullah, كان Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam يجتهد في رمضان ما لا يجتهد في غيره ويجتهد في العشر الأواخر منه ما لا يجتهد في غيره. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would work harder in the month of Ramadan, harder than he did in the remainder of the year, And he would work harder in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, harder than he did for the first 20 nights. And so how do we prepare ourselves for this? How can we do as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did? Rasulullah, he used to stay awake the entire night in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. He used to do i'tikaf in these nights. So what can give us the strength to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these last 10 nights more than we have the entire year? Well, I only have two pieces of advice to leave with you guys for today. Number one, we have to do this act of al-muhasabah. This act of evaluating ourselves, evaluating our performance during Ramadan. Think to yourself, a majority of the Ramadan has passed by. There are no excuses. It's been 20 days. What have I done in these 20 days to prepare for my akhir? How have I performed? How has my qira'ah of the Quran been? How has my recitation of the Quran been? How has my qiyamul layl been? How well am I sticking to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How much sadaqah am I giving? You have to evaluate yourself. Evaluate your performance. Billah alaykum, in these past 20 nights, in these past 21 nights, is there one night you can say that I know for a fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved me from Jahannam? Did I work hard enough in just one night in these past 21 nights where I can comfortably say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved me from Jahannam? Can I say this? Evaluate ourselves. We have to evaluate our performance before it's too late. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said what? Al-Kayyisu, the wise man, the intelligent man, not the foolish man, the intelligent man. Man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut. The one who evaluates himself, who holds himself accountable, and because of his accountability, he acts for what comes after death. He acts for the real life, for the akhirah. This is the intelligent man. This is the smart man. And so we have to sit. How did I perform in Ramadan so far? I need to see. I cannot be heedless. I need to know the status of my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you do not know where you stand, how can you progress? How can you improve? It is impossible. And subhanAllah, in these days, some of us are more aware of our financial situations. Much more aware of our financial situation than we are with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with how we act, with our actions, with our worships to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu gave an advice to his young son, he says, يا بني إن من الرجال بهيمة في صورة الرجل السميع المبصر فطن لكل مصيبة في ماله فإذا أصيب بدينه لم يشعر. Oh my son, there are from men who are not actually men, they are animals, in the image of a man who sees and hears. فطن لكل مصيبة في ماله. He is very aware of any problem he has in his money, any little problem that may happen in his financial situation. He is extremely aware of it. فإذا أصيب بدينه. If he is tested with a problem in his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he has a problem in his faith, if he has a problem, if there is taqsir, if there are shortcomings in his actions, in his worships to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لم يشعر. He is heedless. He has no idea what's going on. And we can't be like this. But this is the truth of our existence now, of this materialistic society that we live in now. Some of us, subhanAllah, we are so aware. We are so meticulous with our finances. We look at our credit card statement from the entire month. Look at, did I make every single transaction on there? And if I did, is the amount that they charged me, is that actually how much I was supposed to pay for it? To the cent sometimes. And if there's a problem in that statement, what are we going to do? We call the credit card company and we're willing to stay on hold for a very long time just to get this small issue sorted out for a few dollars. But if we ask ourselves, how are we doing? We don't know our level of worship. And if we don't know our level of worship and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during Ramadan, we will never know. We will always be heedless. And if we don't wake up now, then the opportunity will leave us. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us what? يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. O you who believe, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and look at what you have prepared for tomorrow. Look at it. Write it down and look at it. And as Umar ibn al-Khattab in the famous hadith, he would say, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسَبُوا وَزِنُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُوزَنَ عَلَيْكُمْ. Judge yourselves before you are judged on the day of judgment. Hold yourself accountable before you will be held accountable on the day of judgment. وَزِنُوا أَعْمَالَكُمْ. And weigh your deeds before they are weighed against you on the day of judgment. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the intent of his words, he's clearly talking about the day of judgment. Judge yourself before you are judged on the day of judgment. And weigh your deeds before they are weighed against you on the day of judgment. But what we can take from this hadith in a more general sense is that you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to evaluate yourself before time runs out, before you no longer have the opportunity to act upon that judgment upon yourself, to act upon that evaluation and to change the evaluation and make your status better. The first time we should be evaluating our performance during Ramadan should not be on Eid when khalas, Ramadan is gone, and we'll have to wait another year before the opportunity of Ramadan comes again. And who knows if we'll be alive then? Who knows the status of our iman at that time? And so we have to wake up now, evaluate ourselves now before the opportunity is gone. That's why one of the biggest scholars of the Salaf, his name was Maymun ibn Mihran, used to say, النفس كالشريك الخوان إن لم تحاسبه ذهب بماله. That your nafs, your internal desires, yourself, is like a treacherous companion, like a treacherous business partner. You don't trust him. If you don't constantly hold your business partner, if you don't constantly hold this business partner accountable, what is he going to do? He's going to steal your money. He's going to take your business from you. And so we should be more suspicious. We should not trust our nafs any more than a business partner who we know is treacherous. And nafs, the nafs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, nafsu al-ammara bis-su'. This nafs that constantly orders us to do bad. This nafs that its default is to want to be lazy. This nafs that its default is wants to eat and sleep and entertain itself. Don't think that our nafs is any different during Ramadan. We still want to return to these default settings. And if we don't wake up, if we are not constantly scrutinizing our actions, constantly scrutinizing our every step during Ramadan, our nafs is going to go back to that. Our nafs is going to go back to that laziness, and you will not realize. And if you don't scrutinize it, ذهب بمالك. When Eid comes, khalas, the opportunity is gone, and then you wake up and you realize Ramadan is gone. And subhanAllah, a big problem we also face when we evaluate ourselves is that we think just because we may have been doing better in these past 20 days of Ramadan, we have this short-term memory where we think our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only consists of the first 20 days of Ramadan. We may have been staying away from bad deeds that we normally don't stay away from. I may have been not listening to music this entirety of Ramadan. I may not have been looking at bad things this entirety of Ramadan. I may have been praying more salah, reading more Quran for Ramadan so far. But don't just look at that. Don't forget, those 20 days don't eliminate the 11 months of negligence, the 11 months of heedlessness we are living in. Because we need this Ramadan, and if we think to ourselves, if we remember those 11 months, not just these 20 days, that should motivate us. How much we need Laylatul Qadr, how much we need the remainder of Ramadan. And so after this khutbah, you don't just sit in your thoughts and sit and sulk in your thoughts and evaluate yourself in your head, and then an hour later after you've evaluated yourself, you're motivated to do better. You forget that. You forget any evaluation. You forget the result of your evaluation. You forget all this motivation. No, write it down. Look at it. وَلْتَنْظُرْ. Look at what you have prepared. Look at what you have, how you have performed. You write the results of your evaluation down. Every single action. How have I been doing in my qira'ah of the Quran? How have I been doing coming to the masjid for Fajr and Isha at least? How have I been doing in coming for Taraweeh? Write it all down and look at it. Because that is so important. And we see the power of this muhasabah, this evaluation, this self-evaluation, in a story of one of the repentance of a big scholar of the Salaf. His name was Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad. Fudayl ibn Iyad, before he became a huge scholar, he lived for 40 years as the most notorious highway robber in all of Arabia. Everyone knew who Fudayl ibn Iyad was. And so Fudayl ibn Iyad, he had developed feelings, he had fallen in love with this woman, and he went at night, one night, to go and commit an evil deed with this woman. And so he goes to her house, and her house is surrounded by a wall, and he's trying to scale the wall of the house. And while he's scaling the wall, he hears the neighbor reciting an ayah of the Quran. An ayah from Surah Al-Hadid. أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ. Is it not time for those who believe, for their hearts to be humbled by the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it not time? Fudayl ibn Iyad, he hears this. And he says, Ya Rabbi qad an, this is the time. And so instead of going into the house of the woman, he comes back down and he says, Khalas, I'm not going to do this anymore. On his way back, he sees a group of travelers at night. And they're debating amongst themselves whether they should continue traveling at night or not. The people who say, okay, let's rest here and continue traveling in the morning. We need some rest. But the other group of people, they're saying, no, we can't do that. We have to continue traveling at night. Fudayl might be there somewhere. Fudayl might catch us when we're not paying attention. And Fudayl ibn Iyad himself is hearing this, subhanAllah. He hears this and he says, subhanAllah, not only was I just coming back from I was about to commit an evil deed with this woman, I have instilled my fear into the hearts of the Muslims across the lands. SubhanAllah, what have I become? How is this my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because he remembered this. He knows he's a highway robber for 40 years. He knows he's been in a bad situation. But he never actively thought about it. He never actively was shown how bad of a situation he is in. And when he saw that, he changed, he repented, and he became Abidul Haramain. He was known as the righteous worshipper of Mecca and Medina. There's not a single book of tafsir that you see in except that it is littered with the quotes of Fudayl ibn Iyad. Because of this muhasabah, this evaluation. After this khutbah, write down your performance and look, that should motivate you to do better. That's number one. Number two, the second advice we have is that you must promise yourself that you won't make excuses. Promise yourself that after you sit down and you've written your evaluation, don't you dare look at that and say, oh, that's because of the iftars, that's because of the social obligations, that's because of school, that's because of work, that's because of my family, that's because of my cats. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's all rejected. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَاتٍ. They are only a few days. We do not accept these excuses during Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us He does not accept these types of excuses. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تُلْهِكُمْ أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. O you who believe, do not be distracted. Do not allow your money, do not allow your family to distract you from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Whoever allows themselves to be affected by these excuses, they will be losers. These are rejected. We do not accept these excuses. Not during Ramadan. And it's the worst thing you can be tested with. Because you found yourself, if you constantly have a habit of making excuses, you found a way to constantly be satisfied with mediocrity. And you will never improve. You keep making for yourself excuses. That's why the famous scientist, his name was George Washington Carver, used to say 99% of the failures come from people who have a habit of making excuses. Wallahi, you cannot be successful in this dunya if you constantly make excuses, let alone the akhirah. My dad would always tell me, subhanAllah, that surgeons, they hate excuses. They don't want to hear your excuses. You're going through kidney failure, you're going through problems, you're going through whatever you're going through. You need to be in that operating room and do the surgery without anything. And so there's this time for surgeons, the grueling time of period, called their training period, which is called the residency. And it's a terrible time. It's really terrible. 48-hour, 72-hour shifts, barely any sleep. But when the resident, the surgeon in training, he is visited by his supervisor during the shift, during the grueling shift, and he asks him, how are you doing? How are you feeling? He says, I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling great. I can't get enough. While internally, he's contemplated suicide like 7 times. He's on his 10th Red Bull, and he'll collapse at any time. Yet he does not allow these excuses to prevent him of reaching his goal in this dunya. He does not prevent this. And they put up with this for 3 to 7 years. Imagine. We as Muslims, we can't look at these disbelievers who will put up with this for an insignificant part of this dunya. We can't set our excuses aside in these last few nights of Ramadan and work as hard as we can for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we truly think that these excuses are valid, we should be ashamed. Because I guarantee you, there are people with more social obligations, more financial obligations, more work, more everything than us. They are more busy. Yet they are excelling, they are doing better than us. So these excuses, they don't count. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. One of the most important aspects to prevent ourselves from making excuses, what does this mean? When you look at your shortcomings, you have no one to blame but yourself. You have no one to blame but yourself at the lackluster worship we have put up this Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what? مَنْ وَجَدَ خَيْرًا فَلْيَحْمَدِ اللَّهِ. Whoever sees any good, then he should praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ وَجَدَ غَيْرَ ذَلِكَ فَلَا يَلُومَنَّ إِلَّا نَفْسَهُ. We should not blame anyone but ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps giving us year after year opportunities during Ramadan. Opportunities. مَنْ صَامَ رَمَضَانَ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنبِهِ. Whoever fasts Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive his previous sins. Whoever stands up, whoever prays Qiyamul Layl all throughout Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive his previous sins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us 30 opportunities every Ramadan to be saved from Jahannam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us Laylatul Qadr every single year. Yet we are the ones who made excuses. We are the ones who told ourselves, we're lazy. I'm not going to do this. I have excuses. I have work. I have this. I have whatever. We are the ones who told us that. فَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَظْلِمَهُمْ وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not oppress us, but we oppressed ourselves. We said no to all these opportunities. We put up these excuses. But there's still hope. We still have 8 days left of Ramadan. We still have 8 powerful, very important nights. And believe me, if you focus, you can do triple the amount of ibadah in these remaining nights that you did in the first 20 days of Ramadan, if you focus and you have sincerity. But you go through that by making sure first you evaluate yourself and you promise yourself that you will not make excuses. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم إنا نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم أنت لنا كما نحب فاجعلنا لك كما تحب. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه ولا تجعله ملتبسا علينا فنضل واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم بلغنا ليلة القدر. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.